Good morning, everyone. I'd like to draw your attention to this image I have on the left. It states that it's not AI generated, but I, in fact, am the one that generated it. Now, are you going to listen to the image, or will you take my word for it? So in this presentation, we're going to be covering a little bit of the background of my work. We're going to talk about why it's important in this field. We're going to cover two out of the three parts of my thesis, as well as my current and future work in my Master of Science degree. So to give a little bit of background, I was recently accepted into the Association for the Advancement of Artificial Intelligence for two out of the three parts of my thesis. Here, I got together with subject matter experts where the topic was covering AI governance and its implications and impact on society today. I wanted to give a special thanks to my professor, Dr. Hamad Al-Dula at East Tennessee State University. He's been a tremendous mentor for me and has helped guide me and help me develop my thesis, which I'll present to you today. So to go over some of the implications and why this stuff matters, what this is all about. Well, back in 2023, I was scrolling through YouTube, and I found this hilarious video of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson eating rocks. Now, at the time, this was just all fun and games. You could obviously tell that this was AI generated, and it was all jokes. And this is kind of how AI generated content was perceived at the time. You would see the extra fingers, morphed faces, etc. It wasn't until just over a year later that I saw this video, similar video, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson eating rocks, that looked that much more realistic. And so I'm like, this is still funny, but this is starting to get really real. And so I started to think about the implications of this, what it could eventually, become. And so furthermore, I was scrolling through social media. I found an AI-generated post of a certain individual. And it's really funny because my wife actually just now, she was scrolling through Facebook. She saw an AI-generated photo of 50 Cent and Slim Shady. I can't go. Yeah, Eminem, sorry. Man, I'll tell you my age.
Easy.
So scrolling through this post, I saw comments like, what a good person this person is. Look at the good act. And then vice versa on the other end of the spectrum who didn't like this individual, saying they're just doing this for their own gain. But what I was really looking for in the comments was a statement saying that this was AI generated. Or even the defense saying, oh no, this is not AI generated. What shocked me most is I didn't find the question asking even if it was AI or not. So this really stood out to me, and this is where I started to think, well, this means that the individuals that are seeing this post, they've already determined in their mind that what they had been seeing was the real thing. It painted a portrait of that individual in their mind, and it affected the way they think. And when you think about this starts to get really scary when you start to think how this technology can be used globally. Furthermore, a company in Iceland, Icelandair, started a "This is not AI" campaign where they showcased images of the natural beauty of Iceland, encouraging travel, inviting people to come, stating that these images that you see, they're not AI generated. And see, AI has come so far that it can generate these really hyper-realistic landscapes. And so it's really interesting. It shows you how these companies around the world are trying to adapt to this really impactful technology. So I ask myself, are we only allowed to take someone's word for it? I trust Icelandair, but still we're just taking the people's word for it. Is there a way to actually prove, or at least show evidence for, if an image is authentic or not? And so the images, such as those showing aftermath of destruction, the middle of war, and even medical imagery can all be AI generated at a super hyper-realistic scale. All of these images can be scattered around through social media, different networks, and you can see and it start to change, just like with these silly social media posts, and affect people's mind. Now, fortunately, across the globe, researchers have tried to solve this problem, and the typical answer comes to data. So, what researchers do, they aggregate a bunch of images, and they take them and they store them, they scrape them off the web, and they start populating their data sets. Now, the purpose of this is though machine learning models, which I'll call this guy my AI friend. His whole role is to learn the different types of patterns from these authentically real images and try to determine and learn and see what is actually real and what is not. So that way, when it encounters an AI-generated image out in the wild, it can correctly classify it as not being real. However, a lot of the most popular data sets used to tackle this problem, CelebA, GenImage, etc., so on, these are all the data sets that are used to try to determine and figure out if what you're looking at is actually real or not. But unfortunately, none of these data sets. In my research, I've covered a number of over 40 data sets used to tackle this problem. None use any authentication criteria. But so what does that mean? And why is that important? Well, take for example, you are a dataset curator or an AI researcher, and your goal is to try to populate a dataset full of images of puppies. You go on Google, your favorite search browser, or Brave, or all the DevOps. I learned some others from my friends. But the goal is to try to gather as much data as possible. You want to teach an AI to see what looks like a puppy and tell what is real, but almost immediately within this initial search, some of the first few examples are actually AI-generated images. So what this means is the term coined is called AI slop. It's where AI-generated images start to populate what was normally real images in just browsing. And so what happens is if you automate the scraping process, you're bound to get some AI-generated slop in your data. But why is this important? Take back, for example, our data set full of quote-unquote authentically real images. Without using any authentication criteria, some of these images can be actually AI. That contaminates the data set, and consequently, when you use our special AI machine learning friend here, when he trains on this contaminated data, it then doesn't get the ability to properly learn the differences between these patterns. It starts to see and tries to compare those real images, and it says right next to its partner, well, this image is real too, without really knowing the truth. So when we come across that AI-generated image out in the wild, it's going to incorrectly classify this as real. This is where WIRA comes in. So this is the first part of my thesis, and it stands for What is Real Anymore? It is an image data set that is composed of over 4,000 images, 2,000 of which are authentically real and validated, which we'll get to in a second, 2,000 of which are AI-generated counterparts. WIRA ensures that the images, the authenticated images, are absolutely, completely real to a high degree of certainty. So, because we've entered in this age of not knowing what is real anymore, we've unfortunately, unless you are a generator or a photographer yourself, when you take images or take videos, you are the only person now that knows, what is actually real. You can prove that to yourself, but as far as trying to prove something that it is actually real, you can only gather as much evidence as possible. You can only look at the reliability of the image. On top of that, to back up the evidence claims, I include traceable image origins in this data set, where we can actually go back, so if there's any critique that needs to happen on a particular image, you can see exactly where the image came from, an exact process of why it was aggregated into the data set. Now, this completes WIRA, but you need an image aggregator or a pipeline to do the job. And this is the second part of my thesis, the real-to-AI pipeline. So, the real-to-AI pipeline basically sums up to 3 main steps. It asks, when it comes across a new image that is going to be scraped, it asks who took the image, what type of tool took the image, was it a camera, was it something else, and it asks, are we able to validate, are we able to show evidence for the first 2 steps? How can we try to at least see if it's real? So these 3 steps, they're all in an automated process in a step that I call the authenticity validation and traceable origin step. The next part of this pipeline is what I call the AI factory, and there's 2 really important modules in this AI factory. What it does is it takes an image after it passes through that authenticity criteria that we mentioned earlier. It uses a computer vision captioner that takes that real image, scans it, generates a caption, and it pairs that caption with the real image. And you'll see why we'll have this pair in just a second. So that image caption pair is then paired with the second part of the AI factory, the AI image generator. The goal of this is to take that image caption pair and to generate a hyper-realistic AI counterpart. So to see this in action, say we want to curate a new image to our Wyra dataset. We have an image of someone having fun in the dunes on a dirt bike. It first needs to check out, make sure it's real, so it passes through the authenticity validation steps. Once that checks out, it then proceeds to go to the AI factory. The AI factory uses that computer vision module and then generates a caption for that image to then be paired with that real image. That image caption pair is then processed through the rest of the AI factory, and then it generates that AI hyperrealistic counterpart. And upon comparing these 2 images together, you might be able to tell the slight differences between the 2. But if you can't, that's okay. That's the goal. See, the goal of this is not to show the obvious signs of AI that's typical for AI-generated images. The goal is to try to find those really small, tiny patterns not normally seen with the human eye. And these are the patterns that are stored and kept in the Wyra dataset. So, we have the data, we've got the pipeline, we've got all the stuff ready to go. The next step is what I'm currently working on and what's going to cap off my thesis. So remember our AI friend? So to complete my thesis, there had to be a really creative way to determine the differences between these different types of these fake and real images. So typically the solution is just more data, but what ends up happening is researchers take all this data and they try to force feed a single AI to learn all these different patterns. But how much easier, how much more manageable would it be if we had a single AI that was responsible for each of its own image categories? It's a lot less load, and you get a lot better output. So when you have images that show the aftermath of destruction, current images of war, and misinformation images in the medical field, these are all different image categories. And so assigning a special AI friend to each of them, what this does is allows all of these AIs together to collaboratively learn the different patterns between each category. So that way, every single one of these AIs will be able to learn the patterns and distinguish collectively between each of these image categories. And what this allows for is the correct classification of these AI-generated images. And this is what I call the AI ensemble, and it reminds me of something that a term that I've first heard from Dave Bach, a council of experts. And the council of experts, it is backed by the Wyra image dataset. It then knows to use those correctly authenticated images alongside those hyper-realistic AI counterparts, learn the patterns, but without the real-to-AI pipeline, Wyra wouldn't be where it's at. So with these tools, all developed for the the protection of innocent individuals around the globe to defend themselves from AI misinformation. With these tools, they can see what is actually real and what is not. But without these tools, will you be able to tell what is real anymore? Thank you.